White Sox fans, welcome into a special post-game edition of the Sox on Tap podcast. It's Tony Marchese alongside a very, very psyched NWI Steve tonight. I'm cracking them. Victory beers are in order. Steve, I think you've got some celebratory drinks. We're here to talk about a White Sox loss. No, we're not. It's actually that Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn have been relieved of their duties by White Sox owner Jerry Reinsdorf this afternoon. Steve, you and I were on the phone talking about some other White Sox happenings before the news broke. We actually got that news from our correspondent out there, Southside Ron. He was first on it today, so kudos to Southside Ron for bringing it to our attention. Steve, I see you pouring those. I'll get to you here. How you feeling, my friend?
Anthony, let me talk to you. I'm feeling fucking phenomenal right now. This is the happiest day for me since we were walking down those fucking ramps after Game 3, October 10th, 2021. This is the best day since then because you know what? I get to go to bed tonight knowing that Ken Williams and Rick Hahn can't fucking hurt me anymore. It feels so goddamn good. Fuck, man. I'm loving it.
Oh man, it's interesting. It's interesting to be here conversing about this because I didn't see this coming. I don't think anybody saw this coming. The White Sox played this rather close to the chest, but we did hear rumblings that there was interviews taking place within the organization. I didn't really expect that to be Jerry Reinsdorf trying to getting to the bottom of the Rick Hahn, Kenny Williams shit, but that turns out to be the case. I think it was just hours before all of this. There was a tweet that had come out, Steve, that said, this is nothing that any other team wouldn't be doing in an unsuccessful season like this. This was mere hours before the firing. That's interesting to me because when you normally read that as a White Sox fan, you're sitting there going, yeah, okay, sort of rolling your eyes, thinking about it. I'm sure most people were. But then, boom, there it is. And I don't know if I fully processed it yet, Steve. I don't think I've fully processed the fact that they're actually gone, that I'm not going to wake up tomorrow morning and we don't have to go play Rick Hahn bingo in his next press conference. I'm a little shocked. So walk me through this, Steve. How are you handling this?
You know, obviously, when you and I were on the phone earlier, I was, driving home from the gym. No big deal. It's just part of my routine.
Let everybody know that you work out.
Yes. Yeah. It's part of my life. It's boring, but it's part of my life, as Ron Burgundy would say. And when you broke that news to me, did you keep count of how many times I said, let's fucking go?
I'm sure you were definitely a joy to watch in traffic. I'm wondering, as you're cruising around the streets of NWI out there, if the people saw how happy and overjoyed you were, because there was a lot of screaming. I think I put you on speaker and I sort of tossed the phone to the side for about 5 minutes and then came back to it. And you were just screaming for, it felt like at least 5 minutes.
Listen, joyous times call for joyous celebrations. And I may or may not have smacked my center console a couple, 2-3 dozen times because of it. I mean, it was, it's one of those things. Oh, okay. Voodoo. All right. You're going to have to go into fucking timeout for that shit. Okay.
You do drive a Prius though. I've ridden it before.
Anthony, you know as well as I do. Okay. Our lives did not almost come to an end in an Iowa cornfield while driving in a Prius, okay?
It wasn't in a Prius. It wasn't in a Prius. I think it was like a BMW or something, right?
It's not a BMW. I'm not that much of a fucking pretentious asshole. That's not what you call them. But getting that news, I mean, was such a shock because nobody in their right mind ever thought that this would happen. I know I commented on it a little bit Sunday with Jonathan The fact that Rick Hahn's contract status was made public by media puppet Boob Nightingale, I thought that was fascinating. And I said, if I was Big Better Guy, which everybody knows I am Big Better Guy over here at OnTap Sportsnet, that would change the calculus a little bit for me on whether or not Rick Hahn was going to be back. Little did any of us think and realize as we were making jokes about who's conducting these internal interviews that not even 48 hours later, they would both be gone. The sheer surprise of this happening on August 22nd in the year of our Lord 2023 is just absolutely shocking. I don't know another word to use other than shocked, but elated at the same time for a lot of the reasons that I laid out in my column, my second of the day that just came out on a website known as ontapsportsnet.com. It's just it's hard to believe that it finally happened.
Very hard to believe that it finally happened, Steve. I just found out that Vaughn had said that the players found all this out during the game, which is
par for the course.
Par for the course for the White Sox organization, and hopefully that's the last time we have to deal with something like that. But just the talk of dysfunction and, as you've pointed out numerous times, not really knowing who's in charge with this organization. It was very interesting to me that for all the chatter that's been had about this season being unsuccessful, could there be changes afterwards? The whirlwind that we as White Sox fans have been in basically this week, we haven't even been on these airwaves to talk about what happened yesterday while we were on the phone as well. Again, every time Steve and I are on the phone, some sort of White Sox news breaks.
The last 30 hours have been just wild, man.
Yes, this is not the storylines that we thought we would be talking about here in August 2023. You've got the reports that come out from Cranes with, Jerry Reinsdorf is considering selling the team. I think I told you that was a red alert when I got that one. And then we're on the phone again today, and you get the news that Hahn and Williams are gone. Something is definitely happening there within the executive offices of Jerry Reinsdorf. And this comes sort of at a very interesting time, Steve, for a lot of different reasons.
It is fascinating to say the least. If we want to kind of talk about the stadium piece and everything that came out yesterday in the Crane Chicago Business Journal report about the team beginning to explore stadium sites in the city, in the suburbs, and then specifically mentioning Nashville, Tennessee. That was one of the things I touched upon in my piece this morning. Jerry literally going back to page 1 of his playbook from when he bought this team, 4 decades ago. It's been pretty well documented. He never wanted this team to stay on the south side of Chicago in the city limits. And he used Tampa as leverage to get the taxpayers in the state of Illinois, which, hey, Anthony, I appreciate you and your people in that state helping to fund the White Sox Stadium. So thank you. Please continue to do that, if they are able to get a new ballpark. But just going right back and doing the same exact thing here, saying, well, 33 years is a long time for a ballpark, kind of outliving its usefulness. We need to look at some other options here. And, Nashville, they'd really like a baseball team. Just going right back to the well. And it's fascinating, the timing of this with, that loser football team threatening to move to the northwest suburbs. Is the leadership politically in the city of Chicago really going to stomach losing 2 sports franchises in the span of a couple of years? This is a very, very fascinating time in the world of Chicago sports, to say the least.
It is. I think, there was a tweet that came out from 670 The Score. I didn't hear it when it was on air, but somebody floated that Kevin Warren maybe, calling some shots for the White Sox. This was just a caller, theory that Kevin Warren's calling some shots for the White Sox and giving out his playbook on how he's dealt with the city. I think that's an interesting theory. When you talk about the negotiations that happened there. But to me, I don't know about you, Steve. I mean, the Raid isn't the greatest ballpark. You're a ballpark raider by trade. You travel to all these different baseball establishments across the country, and I would say that the Raid is not your favorite, but it's also not the worst. And I don't think it's at a point right now where it's a detriment at this very moment. There's a money play here from Jerry Reinsdorf. That's my thought.
No, that's 100% true there, Anthony. The actual ballpark experience, the experience of sitting and watching a baseball game at the corner of 35th and Shields is fine. That's not the issue. The issue has always been it is not aesthetically pleasing on TV. There is not an area like the Battery in Atlanta surrounding it with bars and restaurants for people to go and have fun and congregate for hours before or after the game. It's surrounded by parking lots. That's always been the knock on it. And for better or worse,
it's Jerry's world.
It's Jerry's world, and it's fascinating because he has always, from what I've heard, opposed building up the area around it for a reason I can't quite understand. For a guy that made his money in real estate, you would think that, building up that area around it and putting other establishments there to keep people there spending dollars for hours before and after the game would make sense financially, but he just never saw it that way. And it's really interesting. And so if this team is able to get a new ballpark, which, I strongly question the odds of that, in the city of Chicago or somewhere in the suburbs. Listen, I would love for them to go down to Tinley Park. That would be just very convenient for me personally. But if that happens, you would hope that they would look to build an entertainment district similar to what they've got going down in Atlanta, in Arlington, Texas, with the new Rangers Stadium, and hopefully try to just maximize the opportunity there. So we'll see what happens with all of this. It's wild to think, and you and I were talking about this, that just 6 weeks ago, I wrote the piece talking about the 35th anniversary of the funding measure passing with the 12:03 a.m. miracle in 1988 to keep this team at the corner of 35th and Shields. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that 6 weeks later, we'd be talking about the same exact situation. I talked very briefly in the column that I'm hopeful that I never have to experience that because I was too young to remember it. But here we are, and it's just crazy.
Yeah, Sal brings up a good point here. Nashville has lots of restaurants and bars. I can actually confirm that, Sal.
Hey, who tipped you off about some of the bars and restaurants in Nashville?
You did. It was
big Nashville guy.
Report. It was a great scouting report. I had a great time down in Nashville, and the first one, the first one that you sent me, Rippy's, great place, great establishment. Had a good time down there watching the Blackhawks draft Connor Bedard. My first thought was, would I be okay with this if the Sox go to Nashville, right? I'm sure that crossed a lot of people's mind. I still don't know if I'm okay with it. I don't really like that. It doesn't sit well with me. I feel like it's too close to the Predators. I'd have to spend summers in Nashville and winters up in Chicago to watch the Hawks. It's kind of backwards. You know what I mean? Just from a timing standpoint, Steven. So I don't like that. But you are correct. We did just discuss all of this stuff that happened prior, and this felt like it was a page out of the same playbook, is what I believe you called it in your column over at ontapsportsnet.com. Steve, do you think that the reports yesterday and the removal of Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn today are at all tied together with the two of them, or are these two totally separate things? Because these are bombshells, really. We, as White Sox fans, for the longest time, you've wanted Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams gone. I think a lot of people still want Jerry Reinsdorf to sell the team, and that was one of the first times you've heard that. The first times you've heard the words he's considering selling the ball club, or even moving the team somewhere, I guess, in a very long time. Before it was move the team, now it's a potential sale. Are those two things linked together in your mind in any way?
It's really interesting, and everybody knows I love a good conspiracy theory. The timing of these reports and the dismissal of these two idiots, it really kind of makes you scratch your head a little bit and think, is there something bigger going on behind the scenes? I mean, let's think about this realistically here. Okay. The stadium lease is up after the 2029 season, which means to have a new ballpark ready for opening day 2030, ground has to be broken in the spring of 2027. So we've got about 3.5 years here right now until they have to have shovels in the ground. One of the best ways to go about upping the franchise valuation for a sale would be to secure a new ballpark, and then also having a quality product on the field to place in that ballpark. So making this change from the front office standpoint to try to get this thing back on track, and those two things kind of coinciding together here, it leads to the ultimate conspiracy theory that maybe, just maybe, the James Bond villain is getting ready to exit stage left and no longer be a cancer on this fan base. I still have a lot of doubts about that, but these things happening a mere 24 hours apart from each other, it makes for great conversation, and it makes for a lot of hashtag content. Let me tell you.
It does. It does. It makes for some very great conversation. Steve, I'll push in on that further. The ground for a long time was very stable with this, and it feels like you're getting rumbles now that the volcano might explode, and this might have been the first of it in terms of major shakeup with this front office, the baseball operations, obviously. But I wonder if it trickles in further, right? Because when you bring in someone else, and hopefully we'll get to who we want or talk about the discussions and the reports on Chris Getz, whoever else is coming up into this. If it's Getz, I think you're going to get some of the same, but you would think that whoever comes up into this role is going to have to look at the manager position, look at, sort of the operations, marketing, all the things that are involved with the identity of the baseball team, because that's all within that purview. It's going to be a different identity than what we've had here for the longest time, that some White Sox fans can't even remember what it was like before that. That's how long these guys have been here. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but it's going to be a very interesting ride.
Oh, I've got thoughts.
It's going to be a very interesting ride over the next 5 or 6 weeks, because they say they want this done before the end of the season. Into this offseason, it was pointed out on the pregame show that whoever comes in here is not married to any of these players on this roster. and I'm still mad at this. Why wasn't this done? I can't be upset that it was done now, but I'm a little upset that it wasn't done prior to the damage that I think this front office did on its way out the fucking door, because that trade deadline was an absolute debacle.
So there's a couple things there. There actually is precedent for front office changes happening after a trade deadline. In 2015, I want to say, the Tigers were playing the Sox in Detroit, and David Price had gotten acquired by the Tigers during that game. And I can't remember who was in the outfield, who was ultimately going back to Tampa as part of that deal. But I remember somebody getting pulled in the middle of an inning because the trade happened. And then a couple days later, Dave Dombrowski was gone and was in Boston. So this has happened before. I can understand the frustration and the confusion with having, people that you're going to get rid of making these decisions. But it's not unheard of. And I know there are a couple of other examples within the last 10 to 15 years. They're just not immediately jumping out to me here. But I specifically remember that Dombrowski situation here because it happened against the Sox. So it's weird to see, no question about it. But you got to think about it like this. If you would have gotten rid of Rick and Kenny at the deadline, who's making those deals then? Chris Getz? Jeremy Haber? What's the confidence level there?
Job? Could they have done a worse job, though? I mean, that's my question here.
Looking at how Chris Getz has handled this farm system, I think you can answer that question.
Well, maybe just I don't think it was really that difficult to part ways with Lucas Giolito, Lance Lynn, Joe Kelly, Kendall Graveman. But the one that throws a whole giant wrench in it for me, which it's obviously come out now, and anybody who's consumes White Sox content knows that Jake Berger was traded by Kenny Williams. And it was like, for what? So that Johnny Nani can sit there for the next 5 fucking years and talk about how bad Jake Eater is? Because there's a million other people out there that feel the same way that Johnny does.
By the way, who told you that Kenny made that trade?
You did.
Thanks.
You did. And it's been hashtag confirmed all over the fucking place. I mean, thank God they're gone, because it's that type of thing that we've seen with this team year in and year out. But fucking come on. They allowed that to happen on the way out the door. And maybe that was the final nail in the coffin. But shit, dude, there has to be some sort of safety protocol in place to not screw something up like that bad.
You would think, however, if we've learned anything being Sox fans over the course of the last decade, there is nothing but dysfunction in this organization and in this front office in particular. So is it really surprising that there aren't any safeguards in place to prevent something like that from happening?
No, it's not. We got a comment from Voodoo in here. I'll go to this one. This is Jerry playing to the fans, his MO, make moves to garner just enough support. I can see where the thought process here is, and Steve, I'll give you your chance to sound off on this, but I disagree with it. And I disagree with it because of this. What has Jerry Reinsdorf ever done to garner support from the fans? if you really want to follow Steve's notion on this and say that really all he cares about is money, my thought process would tell me that Jerry Reinsdorf is doing this because he is interested in potentially selling his team. He is looking at the bottom dollar value of what's going on.
He's thinking of the Reinsdorf family trust.
Yes. It's not to gain enough support from the fans, but sometimes the business owner does realize that he's losing the value in his product. And Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams did just enough to fuck it up badly enough, just enough to kick Jerry off and make him make this move. Because what did we talk about back? What was it? I think we were going to a Hawks game in November, Steve. And I think we were talking about how Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn are going to be here till the very bitter end of this ride with Jerry Reinsdorf because he's 87 years old. He doesn't want to have to go through this whole entire thing where he rehires somebody else. They come in, they want to put in their people, go back and forth on all this, go through a potential new rebuild with everybody. It just doesn't make sense because this ride's going to end at some point within the next couple of years. So I don't think he's playing to the fans here. This product was fucked enough for Jerry Reinsdorf to realize it was time to make a change. That's my thought.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I don't think Jerry Reinsdorf has ever at any point done anything with fan interest at heart. At the end of the day, it is all about trying to line his coffin with better gold so that he can be buried with it. So yeah, this man, he does not care about the fan base. You can see it in his little smug comments that he makes when he crawls out of his palace, to be praised for whatever philanthropic effort is being promoted. He does not care about White Sox fans. He has never cared about White Sox fans. He never will care about White Sox fans. The only people that are giving him support, and I was very sickened to listen to some of this stuff on the postgame show, is, from people that have some sort of organizational ties. I had to listen to Ozzy talk about, people can call Jerry cheap all they want and everything. He wants to win, and then Chuck and Scotty Potts kind of echoing the sentiments there. It's all just fluff at the end of the day. We have enough evidence to know that he doesn't really care that much, because if that were the case, if he really cared about winning, if he was this ultra competitive person that everybody and all of his stooges say that he is, this move would have happened in October of 2016. Rick Hahn and Ken Williams would not have been allowed to steer Rebuild 2.0, but yet they were. And to hear them sitting there praising, saying, kudos to Jerry for making this tough decision when he made it. Fuck that. Fuck that. He wasted a decade of my life that I'm never going to get back because of this bullshit. So take your kudos for Jerry Reinsdorf for being an adult, being a business owner, and doing something he should have done a long time ago, and shove it up your ass.
See, I don't really subscribe on that as much as you do. Just me personally. I still think it's an incredibly difficult decision to move on from something.
It's not though. It's not though, because at the end of the day, and you hear and you see his little statement that he makes, that the cliche about sports being a bottom line performance business. If that's what it was, they're not here, because as I highlighted, they have not won a postseason series since 2005. They have won
Yeah, but I don't think it's fair to sit there and call Scott Podsednik a Jerry Reinsdorf stooge or even Ozzie Guillen who
he's on his network.
Yeah, but I mean, he still says a lot of questionable things throughout there and spits his opinion out on most. I don't think I can go there with Ozzie.
It was a stooge comment. Can we agree on that?
I mean, sure, but
okay.
I just think that for what Ozzie gives the White Sox fans here,
okay,
I would say
that's fair.
I would say that he earns the right to talk to him. I mean, he was employed by him at one juncture in his life. I've never been on Jerry Reinsdorf's payroll, so I don't know what that's like. But it's
I've heard things.
There are some people out there. Now you're going to get even more upset with Ozzie Guillen. Apparently, on the post-game show, he had floated the name of one of your favorite White Sox legends, Jim Thome, for the new role. So I want your reaction to that, because you're mad at Ozzie already, and I was saving this one, and I felt like this was the time to drop it to you.
Fuck the Cleveland Indians. Next question.
You're not on board with Jim Thome steering the ship as the single decision maker? How would that make you feel?
If that happens, I mean, fuck, put me in a coma and wake me up when it's over.
What if they won 3 World Series?
They wouldn't. You know how I know they wouldn't? Because Jim Thome choked away his only 2 World Series opportunities.
So you wouldn't be on board even if Jim Thome won a World Series with the Chicago White Sox. You would not.
He wouldn't though. That's the thing. He only knows how to lose them.
Man, no love for White Sox legend Jim Thome from NWI.
That word doesn't mean what you think it means. If you're using it in conjunction with James,
I only use it to make you upset. Steve. It's good stuff.
Makes me fucking sick.
Man. All right, moving on just a little bit throughout this whole process of digesting the White Sox getting rid of Ken Williams and Rick Hahn here. Steve, I've got to ask you, what was your favorite moment of the Rick Hahn era?
Tonight, what was that, 6:15 p.m.?
Besides him getting fired, I'm just wondering if you have like any sort of like favorite Rick Hahn thing that happened.
I don't know if I've ever told this story. In 2014, I was at a game in April when Chris Sale was pitching, and if you remember, back when they used to have the K Zone, where they would hand out the T-shirts and the K card placards. I was at this game, and I was walking by the table where they're handing them out, and Hahn was actually handing out the T-shirts and the placards to people. And I actually stopped and had about a 10-minute conversation with him during that point. And, that was obviously in kind of the honeymoon phase still of his tenure. But it was just fascinating to think that you actually had a general manager of a team handing out fucking T-shirts and a placard with a K and Chris Sale's image on it at a game. It was wild to me.
What was your conversation with Rick about? Do you remember?
We talked, I think, a lot about prospects and some of the trades and the acquisitions that have been made. Any
advice?
I don't recall at this point. I mean, we're talking 9 years ago now. At this point, I was a young man back then. I had a lot less gray hair because of Rick Hahn's decision making. So, in some ways, I feel like
days.
Yeah. So
glory days.
Yeah, it was wild. But yeah, no, the specifics of the conversation do escape me at the moment.
I also ran into Rick Hahn at a White Sox baseball game. I believe it was the last game of the season in, I want to say 2017-ish. And I was club level walking past sort of the broadcast area, and he had just finished doing a TV appearance. I met him in the hallway. Also had a very brief conversation with Rick Hahn, and this was as Rebuild 2.0 was taking place. And it was kind of that cool moment where it's like, oh, like this guy might end up, bringing this team to a World Series or multiple championships, as he was preaching at the time. And from that moment on, I mean, it's really just been a little bit up and then straight down into the trash. So it's just amazing how fleeting those moments are as a baseball fan. And I feel like we as White Sox fans, I'm sure every other fan base wants to line up. The Yankees fans out there right now are just absolutely they've got it hard.
How awful.
How awful they have it right now. They'll tell you that they're living through the struggles, but I mean, outside
in these really trying times.
Outside of really the Oakland A's, who I think have had arguably a better sort of thing going on here for a little bit until, the news of them potentially leaving. And we'll talk about that in a minute, but we haven't really had anything. We got sold this ride that we were all supposed to go on together. There was so much excitement. There was so much passion within the fan base. Fucking people were lining up and buying day of game tickets to see most of these prospects come up and play their first game. Yoan Moncada, Eloy Jimenez, Michael Kopech, Dylan Cease, Lucas Giolito. I've never seen anything like that with any other baseball team. It was like every single top prospect that could come up was coming up, and ESPN finally noticed who the fuck we were for 5 minutes.
Remember that guy that had the jersey with all the prospect names on it?
Yeah. And all that goes down is just a giant fucking meme now. NBC was printing the shirts with all the names. It was Yoan and Kopech and Anderson, and every single one of these guys turned out to remember, we were worried. We were like, if 2 or 3 of these guys don't pan out, we'll need to make a signing and plug that hole. It makes you feel fucking stupid when you're sitting on the other end of it here. And so while I'm happy that they're gone, it makes you feel really stupid as a fan to sit there and think, wow, we've got such a stacked arsenal of prospects, to then what happened with all of them. And even the draft picks that came afterwards, none of them panned out, except for the one that you traded away because your executive vice president has the authority to just make deals, to walk around and do what? Walk through the fucking front office and say, oh, I made a trade today. For like what? Nostalgia purposes? To say he still has it? Fucking ridiculous.
You seem a little hashtag mad online, Anthony.
I am mad online. Very mad online. I want to know how that went down when he came out of his fucking office and told everybody, well, I just traded Jake Berger. The guy was in the fucking lineup that day. I'm still mad at this. Can you imagine walking down there into the clubhouse after you've already broken up that core of people? And I know that you want to talk, or we've talked at nauseum about the Lance Lynn trade. But if you remember back, you can look at all these pictures of these guys, young guys at Sox Fest together. It was Dane Dunning. It was Gavin Sheets. It was Jake Berger. There was a whole group of them. I remember talking with Jake Berger on Chi Sox Weekly, and he was, dorming with Dunning. And then you systematically broke up the core group of players that your team drafted and tried to develop one by one, sending them all over. And then you've got guys like Berger and Sheets trying to run video game, Twitch streaming things for charity and doing all this good shit. And you systematically broke them all up. And I guarantee you that caused issues because none of them even fucking knew if they could turn around tomorrow. And the guys that they're rooming with, boarding with, it's totally a different story than what you saw over with the Chicago Blackhawks when they brought all these kids up and they turned into stars and they grew together and you supplemented a core. That was the last time in Chicago anybody's put anything together like that led to some sort of sustained success that Rick Hahn talked about for years.
How many times over the course of the last 5 to 6 years, or, well, we'll just go back over the course of the last 3 years since I've been a part of this ride, have I asked you and have I said to you, do you think Ken Williams is just sitting in his office playing with himself? People within this fan base that wanted to put everything on Lawyer Boy, and it's very clear Lawyer Boy didn't have what it took to be a major league GM. But the idea and the notion and the belief that Ken Williams had no say, the highest ranking baseball executive in the organization had no say in personnel decisions, was always laughable to me. You go 9 miles north. Who got all the credit for building that team? It was Theo Epstein. It wasn't Jed Hoyer. Jed Hoyer was literally on the same level as Rick Hahn. But people would always reference Theo. But somehow Kenny Williams never got mentioned here. Fascinating dynamic how that turned out.
What an ultimate job to have, too. Because there was not, and you point back to the accountability statements. There's not an accountability problem. Go ahead. Do the impression.
I would like to just take this final moment here to say that tonight is proof once and for all that there is not and never has been an accountability issue within the White Sox organization. Rick and myself hold ourselves personally accountable for the disaster that is this 2023 season. We let the chairman down, and we hold ourselves accountable for that.
There you go. And that's exactly what happened today. Pure gold there, Steve. That was almost up there with the R rolls that you provide on this show. Man, what a day. What a week as a Chicago White Sox fan. I can't fathom.
And it's still only Tuesday.
I know, right? Who's going to make the roster moves over the next week? Do you think Jerry is going to have to get in there and do some paper transactions?
Hawks got nothing going on down in Florida.
Yeah, maybe he could take the reins for a week or two. Why not? Let him decide what happens when Tim Anderson gets reinstated. That's what I'm curious as to how this will all shake out for the rest of this. And you've got to start looking now at the players too. And for anybody who's listening to this who hasn't listened to the White Sox talk that McGuffey and Ozzy and Chuck and I think Potts is on there as well. Go listen to that because there's a lot of stuff that comes out in that. It'll make you angry. But I listened to this during the last few innings of the ball game tonight. It's worth the listen. It's absolutely worth the listen.
Yeah, I will be listening to that tomorrow morning while I am eating breakfast bright and early. So I'm fascinated because I've heard some little snippets to this point, and I've seen some commentary online about this, and it sounds pretty spicy, to tell you the truth.
It's very spicy. Very spicy. Like a spicy meatball, Steve. You love spicy.
And that's a spicy meatball.
Yeah, it's one of those.
You and your Italian people, you love it, the spicy meatball.
Yeah, are you going to the DJ Pauly D show, Steve?
It's too much grease. Too much
grease for you?
Yeah.
Maybe he could be the new GM.
I can't handle that.
Pauly D, the new GM of your Chicago White Sox.
Nope.
How do we get here? This is incredible. Absolutely incredible. Did you finish all your shots, Steven? You still got more lined up.
I did. The bottle's gone. Admittedly, I don't have a lot of booze on hand here right now at the casa. So I'll tell you this much though. I'm gonna be wilding in them fucking streets this weekend.
Yeah.
I'm going on Friday. I'm a fucking party. Speculation is I might be at Casa de Marchese on Saturday. I'm gonna fucking party some more. I'm fucking
Big if
psyched.
true.
I'm fucking psyched. The
Big
only
if true.
time that you're gonna get a bigger party is the day that Reign of Terror ends. We will have a special show that night. And I tell you, you thought I was drunk in the hotel in Cleveland the night they won the division in 2021. You ain't seen nothing yet. I'm going to be on a different level that night. And then I've already told my bosses this, nobody is going to hear from me for a week because I am going to go on the bender of all benders when that happens.
Well, until that day, we'll keep waiting. I thought that there was a good move made by our team tonight. And I think that that's worthy of, at least, as you said, a mild celebration.
That's why I had to bring the booze out for this occasion here, because like I said, this is the second best possible outcome that can happen right now. So,
couple of questions coming in here, Steve. I want to get to them before we head on out for the night. Sale, what if Jerry sells, but it means they move? I think I've asked you this question.
If they move to Tinley Park, great. Cool. Let's go.
I've asked you this question probably a couple hundred times. It's one of my favorite go-tos when I'm having a couple 2-3 beers with Steve just to get under his skin because he hates Jerry so much. And I want to know, what if that came at the expense of him not having his beloved Chicago White Sox anymore? So, Steven, what if they did move to, I don't know, maybe not even Nashville, but we'll throw some other,
Park City, Utah.
Maybe it's Park City, Utah. Maybe it's Charlotte, North Carolina. Are you moving with the team? Are you going to do what Herb Lawrence said over on CHGO and become a Cubs fan? What's your move here?
I know I would not become a Cubs fan. I have self-respect, so that's immediately out the window. I think odds are I probably become a Barbs fan full-time.
Full-time Barbs fan.
Yeah, that's probably what happens there. Yeah. That's
interesting stuff there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it sort of depends on the distance they would move. It would be a sad time here for Chicago White Sox fans. I don't think that would be easy to swallow. I think that even the reports yesterday, there was a lot of noise coming from the North Side fans,
which is fascinating because for a fan base that portends to not care about the White Sox, they sure have a lot to fucking say. Those fucking losers.
It was interesting to see that they had all of these things to say. I don't think I could take that though. If your team gets trounced out of the city, and you just don't have a team anymore, and there's all these Cubs fans there just chatting and saying these ridiculous things that they're not, I mean, I don't want that. I don't want that at all. I don't want that at all for us. And so I think it's really interesting to me. My last thought on this was it was really interesting to me to see White Sox fans sit there yesterday and be like, see ya, like get the fuck out of here. In fact, one of your favorite Twitter accounts, Ken WO, said, goodbye, you wasted 35 years of my life. I mean, come on now. Talk about the team every day. Let's go. Like, let's be real about this. If this team left, people would be upset.
First of all, Ken's a fucking loser. Okay, Mr. I'm going to cheer for the Astros now because a fucking washed up #cooked first baseman, is there now, who's, been worse offensively than Andrew Vaughn in 2023. So my God, imagine standing for that shit. Holy
Andrew
fuck.
Vaughn's having a great year, isn't he?
I don't think that word means what you think it means.
I just wanted you to elaborate on the hashtag stats. You're the stats guy.
I you know, I'm a mild stat guy. I'm a tweener, you know. I like to combine the old school feel element with new age data and analysis.
There you go.
You know,
Maybe you could be the GM.
I'm a hybrid. Listen, I'm available. You know, I'm open. I'm open to it.
I think Pat Comiskey already nominated you for GM. And I think I nominated a big numbers guy, GM Ron, Southside Ron, for your assistant GM role. And you guys can each make trades with each, half of the organizations, and we'll see how that works.
I mean, the only problem with, anything coming from Comiskey is, he makes a lot of decisions based off of like stupid leprechaun,
you're talking about
theories and such.
You're talking about like Charles Comiskey's like great grandson here. So be careful.
Yeah, Charles Comiskey was a fucking dickhead. So
you're talking about the family name here. You got to be careful what you say.
Yeah, well, I said what I said.
Interesting. The leprechauns are here. They're good luck. Good luck. Steven, I think there was another question in here. We're going to try and pull this up. Well, Brian Lefebvre was in here and says that we need an on-tap outing to the I Love the 90s show on Friday. Steve, you're going to be out there, aren't you?
Friday, no. I've got things going on Friday.
Damn. Brian's going to be out there in his Zubaz and dancing uncontrollably.
I'll be there. I'll be there on Thursday.
You'll be there on Thursday. There's some stuff going down on Thursday as well, I heard. Oakland's coming into town.
Yeah, the A's are coming into town. Fascinating to have the two fan bases that collectively hate their ownership groups more than any other team in the league. And given the report that just came out last night with Jerry threatening to move this team again, Oakland coming in, I think it's going to be an interesting solidarity. And I would venture to say you might get a couple 2-tree sell the team chance going on in there. And I would assume that stadium operations probably going to be on high alert. But it's a good time for Sox and A's fans to come together in unison and call out their dog shit ownership groups.
It's going to be a fascinating thing to watch. I'm curious to see how this goes down after the recent news from today. We've got Brian in the comments, so Steve, you're going to have to answer for this one. Brian says you're breaking his balls, man. You literally told him that you'd be there on Friday, and now you're saying you're not.
I don't remember.
I hope that Brian edits this one, for the clips later, and we can get one of the wah-wah sounds in there.
I don't remember telling the Fever that I would be there specifically on Friday. Some things have come up here over the last couple of days. I got a little something going on Friday. Just one of them things.
Well, Brian, I'm sorry to break it to you, man. Steve's not going to be in the house. He's not going to be at Jerry's World with you on Friday night. It's a huge letdown. For Brian, I think all of the listeners can feel that as well. I'm sorry for you, Brian. Maybe Johnny's there. We'll figure it out. But Steve, Saturday night we'll be taking in a baseball game together, and that'll be fun. Oh, Steve and Pedro have a dinner? Maybe that's what's going on.
That is not what is going on. I can assure you of that.
Steve's trying to talk to Pedro about getting in there for the GM role. That's sad. If it doesn't work out for you there. But Brian says he'll just be a lone loke. I'm so ready for those commercials to be over, by the way. I don't know why, but I'm very much ready.
Probably because they're bad.
I feel like the Vanilla Ice commercials and the marketing that has gone into this is far and away above what we did with who's the guy that Johnny liked that played last year?
DJ Dish Soap.
DJ Dish Soap and the country artist that played this year. So we'll see. Hopefully it doesn't rain for you, Brian, for Alone Loke and Vanilla Ice out there loving the 90s. Sale comes in here with his own and says Steve's meeting with future GM Chris Getz.
Can I touch on that real quick here? So I've seen a lot of people, a lot of commentary on the X machine saying that, all the happy vibes and positivity right now will all come crashing down to earth when Chris Getz gets announced as GM. I personally feel like if that was going to happen, it would have happened this afternoon. They would have said Ken Williams and Rick Hahn have been relieved of their duties, and Chris Getz will be assuming the role of general manager. I feel like they would have done it already. They wouldn't have strung out this process till the end of the season just to bump Chris Getz up. So I know a lot of people are conditioned to expect the worst from this organization. I get it. I fall victim to it once or twice a year. It happens from time to time. I don't see it in this case.
Steve's giving Jerry some credit here.
No.
Yep.
I will.
You can't sit there and say that you don't expect the worst and then say that this guy's always going to do the worst thing possible. So I'm just playing a little bit of devil's advocate for you here, Steve. If they're actually doing the right thing here, be the bigger man. Say that it's a good thing that they're doing. And maybe it's not Jerry by himself. I'm sure he's got a team of advisors that are within this decision.
I think it's whoever preps Jerry's Ovaltine is the one that ultimately made the decision.
Are you an Ovaltine guy at all, Steve? Or not an Ovaltine guy?
I just wonder, why do they call it Ovaltine? The jar is round. The mug is round. They should call it Roundtine.
Roundtine.
You don't get the reference. I know Sal gets the reference.
Sal get the reference. Is this a Seinfeld deep
Sal
cut
will
here?
Definitely get the reference.
You're a Seinfeld expert. I forgot about that.
That's hashtag confirmed.
It's almost the off season, so you can live tweet your Seinfeld.
The best of times.
Man, Ron's confirming in the comments here on YouTube. He gave credit. That's fantastic. I love it. I love it. We're just about an hour in here, Steve. It's almost time to shut it down. The White Sox lost a ball game tonight. That's no surprise to
nobody
anyone.
cares. Nobody cares.
It's no surprise to anyone. We will be back on these airwaves, chatting about more White Sox stuff as this all goes down. I know we normally do the series recaps, but programming note, we ran early today. That said, we will be back this weekend for sure to continue whatever develops here over the next few days. Even Brian is in the comments saying he forgot they played. I sort of forgot they played as well today with all this news that is broken. But Steve, any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
My final thoughts are to see the Chicago White Sox organization once again hold themselves accountable speaks to the nature of this organization and the commitment to building a winner for the White Sox fan base.
Well put. Well put. Steve, thank you for hopping on here tonight. It's amazing what we witnessed today. There's so much to unpack. I hope we tried to, get to the bottom of everything that we could tonight. Thank you to everybody who tuned in, especially those of you who were in the YouTube comments, youtube.com/OnTapSportsNet. Go subscribe so you know when we're live. Hop in the comments, ask questions. We will try and throw as many of those as we can up on the screen. You can follow Steve at NWI_Steve, myself at Tony on Tap on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it these days. Follow the show at Sox on Tap. We'll be back next time. Until then, White Sox forever.
White Sox for life.